Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Embracing the Moment. I'm your host, Pastor Joe Arcoli, discipleship pastor here at Genesis Church, and I am with one of our mainstays here on Embracing the Moment, lead pastor of Genesis Church, Pastor Bob Tome.
Hello, everyone.
So, long time no see.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me.
A lot of good episodes you had.
Yes, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of good engagement on this particular series, and we're excited to keep this conversation within the broad category of wellness kind of moving forward here. So tonight, we're going to be talking about sleep, nutrition, and we'll touch on exercise. We've hit exercise pretty heavy, but we'll kind of touch on that as well. But more of an emphasis on kind of those first two areas with sleep and nutrition. Yeah. So kind of where we've been starting these conversations in this series, Pastor Bob, I want to kind of kick this over to you, is why should we as Jesus followers care specifically about the topics of sleep, nutrition, and of course exercise as well? Yeah.
Well, I think as I think about those three things, and if you have been following for a while and walking through this series, at some point, I think early on, I mentioned how one of the doctors at UPMC in Pittsburgh said that if we practiced these three things, sleep, exercise, and nutrition,
I do remember you mentioning
90% of the diseases we face, we wouldn't need to deal with. And when I first heard that, it was, wow, did I hear him right?
90%.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And yet, when we do think about some of the common things like diabetes, heart disease, you begin to realize, nutrition, exercise, sleep, all those things play into being healthy in those very critical areas. Yeah. So when I think about us then caring, not only can we be motivated from the practical side, but God encourages us that we are the temple of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
We think of a temple, we think of, cleansing, we think of care, we think of a special place. So I think a lot of those parts, the sleep, the healthy diet, and regular exercise aid in our spiritual stewardship, as well as just our physical stewardship and all the way around.
Well, and you had me thinking about, so if you've kind of been on this journey with us through this series on wellness, I think back to some of our first few episodes where we had Jason Berry on.
Right.
And I just really appreciated kind of his angle, because I think there's a lot of angles to come from a faith perspective on these areas and why it's important to practice. There's so many terms for it today, right? Self-care, stewardship of the things that God's given us, and then through the lens of we're the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so I think his angle of, hey, look, this actually helps us to function at an optimal level so that we can then live out the great commandment to love God and love neighbor with everything that we have and all of who we are, and then to fulfill the Great Commission, to make disciples. And so that's going to be a challenge for us if we're not functioning as optimally as we could be. And so here I sit next to you with a pre-K, a toddler, and a newborn.
Okay.
So sleep in particular is very hard to come by in this stage of life. Out of just people in my stage of life with a newborn, what are some of the areas of struggle that you have seen and maybe even encountered in your own life in these areas? Just so folks tuning in this evening aren't going, guys, this sounds good, but you just don't understand like my particular stage of life that I'm in and why this is really hard for me. Because it's just, these things are really hard.
They are, and that's a good point, because one of the things I thought about leading to our discussion is that you may be watching and you look at these things, you see the value of these things, and yet it doesn't seem like the results are what you want. And so I think, for example, on a personal level, I know that I operate every day without a thyroid. So I take a medication for that, of course, but it's still draining. Wow. So for me, it really sounds like you're productive and energetic when I say I get up in the morning like real early and go.
Right, yeah.
that sounds good, but at that point, when I take my medication and I start moving, you know, the metabolism is there in my movement. Now come home with me at 3 p.m. And when I sit down, some people might think, oh my goodness, you take long naps, but I could take a nap for 2 hours. Because once I stop, my metabolism, where it is, it shuts down. So for me to keep going, in a sense, is good for me, or I know I'm going to stop. So I say that because I know that sometimes genetically, some predispositions exist where you try and you work hard and you still have that battle.
Right.
And I know for me, and I've just been thinking about this lately, I have to be careful not to look at other people. Because what I find is sometimes when I think about, oh, I want to be physically strong.
Yeah.
And yet I look around, well, that person is doing pretty good, or that person, why can't I be like them? I have to be careful because I can develop then a heart issue spiritually.
Right.
That can affect me.
Exactly.
So I don't think it's a matter of giving up. I think that you push through, you plow through it, you keep working on it. I mean, I just started since we had our conversation with Jason. You know, I started working on some of those things. I can say there's one more belt loop, you know, that I'm getting to.
Right.
But I need to realize it. First of all, for me, it's going to be maybe a longer process.
Got to be there for the long
because of all the medical issue of no thyroid, age. You know, my body is not going to burn. You know, as much as somebody who's younger. It's not going to idle
at the same high RPMs maybe as it once did.
But I will say I have felt better taking Jason's advice. I felt better working on, you know, watching my meals, you know, thinking about, okay, I'm going to incorporate this fruit cup into my breakfast with a bowl of Cheerios instead of, you know, adding like breads and things like that. So I find myself at times where, as I'm doing that, I can feel throughout the day, you know, the difference. And then when he said about going to the gym and focusing on the weightlifting versus cardio for someone like me wanting to lose weight, at first I doubted that, but I do feel better. So my plan now, when I go to the gym, I will get on the bike anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then I will begin, I remember him saying, beginning with the 3 sets of at least 12 or more. So I do that. I'll work through maybe 4 routines of the machines.
Okay.
And then I will go back to the bike and do 15 more minutes of cardio. And then finish out the workout. And then when I want to increase the weights, I'll take those steps slower. Maybe it won't be 4 machines, but it might be 2 machines.
Gotcha.
So I want to encourage you that when you start, you might have doubts, but I would encourage you to keep going, because I think that's where I started to feel like, oh, I'm up on more belt buckle. Where in comparison to going to the gym and always doing cardio, that wasn't happening. So for me, I found that niche, and I think the biggest problem now is time. I got to get there, you know, very consistently,
right?
And work on that. So when I think about some struggles, I think our schedules, maybe predisposition, age, you know, some of the things that are just naturally there, without talking about, okay, don't eat that cookie or don't do this, you know, some of the other things that are there. And it can be very discouraging. But then I do have to keep in perspective that when I do the very best to steward myself, if this is where, in the sovereignty of God, it's all the further I can get, I need to make sure I maintain an attitude of, God, why can't I? But operate out of, God, what do you want me to do for you today?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
So that to answer, that's a big long answer for number
No.
two.
It's helpful because honestly, and we could probably even make it longer, just because there are so many struggles. Yeah. I think I said this to you recently. So having the opportunity to grow up in church and hearing most of my life, and now finding myself saying it as a pastor.
Right.
Hey, one of the primary ways that you're going to be able to grow in your relationship with Jesus is through reading scripture and praying. And I find myself going, yeah, that's very true, but how?
Yeah.
How do I? And I feel, and I'm bringing that up because I feel like it's the same thing. How many times do I need to hear medical advice be, well, it's important to eat healthy, to exercise, and get adequate sleep. I've heard it so many times. It's kind of like, yeah, but right now, here's all the struggles. And you highlighted several of them.
And you know where I struggle when you say about people in professional roles telling you what you should do?
Yeah.
Why aren't they losing weight? The person who's telling me to lose 20 pounds could probably lose 20 pounds. So I had that, but I do think, I'm just being honest, I do think about that, you know.
And now we're back to what you said, right, about making sure, hey, we're not passing too much judgment, because now we don't know what they struggle with.
That's
we don't
true.
know, so here we are full circle.
Yeah, I just think it's, you know, when you sit in a doctor's office and they're going through all this stuff, and
I know.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, okay, well, or you see the person, you know, I see this at the gym sometimes. You know, somebody's in there and, wow, I wish I could look like them.
Yeah.
And then you go outside and they're smoking a cigarette. You know, it's kind of like, okay, you're doing all this work, but now you're just doing something to your lungs.
And we all have our struggles.
Yeah.
And we all have our struggles. And if we're not careful, we could idealize a person and just like, I see this. I see physical strength.
Yeah.
They must just be great and they must not struggle with anything. No, we all have our struggles. So needless to say, I think we've been pretty clear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you guys could add in the comment section or email us and just be like, yeah, but you missed this struggle. I'm sure that we're missing some.
Yeah. I guess my encouragement is don't stop because we have, quote, a struggle.
Yeah. Let's find ways to work.
But do the best in your struggle to provide the best.
So I'll share a little bit of my own experience kind of in the stage of life that I find myself in, where young children want to be present with my wife. If you're familiar with Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, my wife and I, we both quality time. It's our love language, which is very hard to find right now in this season of life. So we try to be as intentional as we can with those aspects, and wanting to practice what I'm preaching, practice what I'm teaching, so I'm not hypocritical in these areas, and recognizing that in this season of life, I might not be able to exercise the amount of time that I actually want to exercise. And so my approach in this season has been, something is better than nothing.
Right.
So I might not get out and get to go for my full 2 to 3 mile run. Maybe that evening it's a mile or a mile and a half.
Right.
At least it did something, because I'll tell you, one of the important pieces with these 3 areas, sleep, exercise, and nutrition, is that they really do go together. I sleep better when I can exercise. Yeah. I can exercise more effectively when I'm eating better. Yeah. And I can gain the optimal benefits of the exercise when I'm eating better. Yeah. And when I'm getting sleep. So some of it is, my encouragement would be, give yourself grace in that. And I don't mean that from a theological perspective. Right. Because saying that makes some people uncomfortable. That's not. I'm not coming at it from the theological perspective as much as just like, be gentle with yourself in that. Right. If you're like me, you are pretty hard on yourself, and you might get so frustrated. You're like, but if I can't just go all in, then I'm just not going to do it. Yeah. And my encouragement would be, do what you can in the stage and in the season of life that you find yourself, and then be intentional. You know, if you're married, if you have a family, have that open communication with your spouse. One of the things that my wife and I have found helpful is at the end or the beginning, depending on how you frame your week on Sunday. We've just found it, and we don't always practice it, but when we can, it's helpful. We kind of have we call it our business meeting Sunday night after the kids are down, and we just look at what's in the coming week, What evenings do I have activities? What evenings might she have some activities? What doctor's appointments do we have that week for ourselves, for the kids? And then we can plan our ideal days around that schedule, knowing full well, especially with kids, that schedule's probably going to change through the course of a week. But the point is, try to find simple steps that you can take to really reprioritize your schedule and say, here's what we value as a family. Here's what we value as a couple. Here's what I value as an individual. I want to take my health seriously. And so I'm just acknowledging I can't do all of the things that I would like to do ideally. What are some of the things that I can do right now? So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that's good. I think, and I know a lot of people, talk about sleep as an example. You were mentioning sleep earlier.
Hard to come by right now.
With kids, and a couple of the things that I've learned over this series, reading and listening, sleep is something that a good 7 to 8 hours is wonderful.
Amazing.
If you can get that. Sometimes maybe it's 6 hours. But what I heard is the key is a consistency of 6 hours. So if that 6 hours is 11 to 5 a.m., 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., make it that consistent. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. I need to go to bed.
Right, because your body gets into that rhythm.
Right. And so a lot of times the rhythm of that sleep is more beneficial than if you tried to lay there for 8 hours and just toss and turn.
Right.
So that was one thing. And I've listened to people talk about the use of melatonin.
Yeah.
That how that helps them sleep. It's something that's not, addictive. It's something you can get over the counter, and yet it doesn't mess you up it's not like you take it and then you're a zombie for 8 hours.
Correct.
You could wake up to go to the bathroom or whatever. So I think, some helps like that. One of the things I do remember from Amen Clinics, and that is to, when you go to bed, some people have a TV in their bedroom.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how even the light, even though you may be sleeping, if that blue light is on,
that's it.
Your brain is still being triggered.
Yeah.
Even though you may not think that. I mean, I think about this morning. So I got up. It was 4 o'clock. I came downstairs. I was going through my study time, and then I thought, I'll turn on the news and see what the weather's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's like 6 o'clock. I fall asleep, and then I wake up at 7 o'clock. But what's happening is that TV was on
the whole time.
So my brain is still going to be responding, even though I don't hear a thing that the newscasters are saying.
You're still, your body's still engaging at some level.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So the suggestion is have a room that's totally dark. So that you can sleep, just having a totally dark room. Yeah. So those are just some steps that I think about. There may be others that.
Yeah, and those are helpful. And Amen Clinics, you highlight. I know they have some good material on this as well. And there's in the day and age in which we live, there's plenty of good information out there that you can tap into, and perhaps you might already have tapped into this particular area, and maybe there's some resources that you want to recommend. You can comment. We'd love to hear from you. One of the pieces off of that, Pastor Bob, with the television is our cell phones.
Yes.
And our laptops and tablets. Yeah. I wish that I was better at this, so I'm a bit hypocritical as I say this myself. But the blue light is key. Yeah. And the screen, whether it's a television, a phone, laptop, tablet, are all emitting that blue light. And so the encouragement that I've read is that if you can at least 1 hour, if not more, before bedtime, not have any of those screens in front of you. Oh. Because of the way, to your point, the way that it's engaging your brain, even when you are awake and active, the way that it engages our brain actually prevents us from the I'm going to use the wrong terms here because I'm not medically astute in any way, but it actually, my understanding is it prevents our brains from entering into the process of preparing us to fall asleep. I'll say it that way. So that's just another small practice. I think another help, and I know that this is going to be probably contingent upon your job because some of you are on call. Some of you, there's weeks where you need to have your phone right next to you. Instead of using your phone as your alarm, buy an old-fashioned alarm clock so that you can take your phone and actually set it in a different part of your bedroom or set it in a whole nother room. They make these devices, as crazy as it sounds. I know some people who have them, like, we do it because we just can't help ourselves. They have like a little iPhone jail that you put your phone in, and it won't unlock until you preset it to unlock at a certain time. Yeah. And it won't unlock until that time. So if it's really an addiction that you're trying to break, there are devices out there for that, for whatever that's worth. So that blue light is key. It really is key, whether it's coming from the television or your phone or your computer. And I don't know about you guys tuning in, but I think back to when I was in high school and in college, and I was big into video games before I had a wife and children. And I remember there were nights where I would do that to wind down, but the problem with that was it was actually engaging my brain in a way that's preventing me from winding down. And so it's no surprise now. I just didn't have the information then. It is no surprise now that I slept rather poorly on nights that I would do that. Well, we have research that shows why. Yeah. I often say to students when we go into the city schools and I'm teaching on these topics, because we do touch on these 3 topics for a couple weeks, and I'll say, I understand why your head is on your desk and you're sleeping, because you probably played video games to 3 a.m, had to get up at 6 or 7 because your parents or somebody you are living with had to go somewhere. Right. And so you're not sleeping, and your body is saying, I've had enough of this, and it's just going to shut down. Right. So it's amazing how we think we can get through the day or whatever, but at some point our body says this is it. Yep, exactly. And the way that God's designed our bodies during our sleep cycles is when our minds are actually processing the day, filing the memory bank, scrubbing the hard drive clean to make it fresh, whatever image we want to use. And then physically our bodies are resting and recharging for the next day. And I think, honestly, Pastor Bob, I think some of this in the day and age in which we live, and some of it's our culture, we're a highly driven culture. With that brings a lot of good. With that actually brings a lot of detriment to our own health as well. So one example, Thomas Edison, we know him, created the light bulb. He was an inventor, created a lot of things, created a light bulb. Did you know that Thomas Edison, actually one of his leading driving forces to wanting to create the light bulb was because he abhorred sleep? Oh, wow. And he actually wanted to throw off the limitation of sleep. Wow. So just think about that, right? Some of us watching, we might work second, third shift. So I'm not suggesting, by the way, me saying that, I'm not like, you're not in sin because of those things. I'm just saying this was one of the driving forces behind the invention of the light bulb, which then led to factories being open 24/7, stores being open 24/7. And with that, as a consumer, I like that. Right, as a consumer. When the crowd's not there. Exactly. But my point is, God has actually woven into the fabric of creation rest cycles. And when we don't practice rest cycles, whether it be sleep, whether it be Sabbath, not from a legalistic standpoint, but just from it's woven into the fabric of creation. I mean, we're getting ready to go from fall to winter, and vegetation is going to rest. It's going to take a break. It's got to take a breath. What we're doing is we're actually going against the grain of our soul in the way that God created us. And you can only run against that grain for so long before you start to get splinters. Right? So these things are really important for us. Again, not in a legalistic sense. I hope you're not picking up on that at all, because that's not our heart. It's a matter of stewardship and wanting to function as optimally as we can. And I think that goes along the same line with diet. We absolutely. We are faced with such a culture today that is contrary to grandparents or great grandparents. When you think about the person who would get up at 6 a.m, farmers in particular, but maybe others, taking care of some chores. They didn't have the conveniences that we have. Exactly. There had to be preparation in a lot of things. Breakfast then would come along. You'd hear about them eating,
all the bacon they could eat, all the sausage, all, pancakes. But then the workday wasn't one
right.
where we were sitting all day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all those calories were being burned, and people were able to move on. We've kind of adopted the same thing in the sense of, well, I can do all of this eating the way my grandmother did when she baked and cooked in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But then we sit all day and stop. Right. And so we have to realize that if we're having a different kind of lifestyle than our grandparents or great-grandparents,
correct, yeah.
We have to think differently then about how we're eating.
Nutrition and exercise.
So you hear a lot about 5 to 6 meals a day.
Right.
You hear about portions, using your fist as a guide. I've heard about that, where use your fist as a guide as far as how much is on your plate. We make bigger plates.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things that subconsciously lead us to eat more.
Correct, yeah.
And so maybe it's getting a smaller plate and sticking to, okay, what's on this plate is all I'm going to eat. Fast food has become convenient.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, somebody's working third shift or whatever, they're coming home. I'll stop at McDonald's and get breakfast. I don't want to wake the family up by rattling pots and pans. We think good thoughts, I think, a lot of times.
Or well-intended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but it can become destructive and can hurt us. And so, it's become a lot easier to do what we do.
And I appreciate some of these things that you're sharing. And by the way, just to kind of caveat, we're not medical professionals.
Right.
Right. So we're simply sharing with you things that we have read, maybe speaking out of our own experience. I know you have more knowledge around these topics, interacting with Amen Clinic.
Right.
You're training within counseling, and these pieces are important. But I just want to take a moment to kind of pause and say, if you struggle in any of these areas, I think especially with exercise or nutrition, if you struggle in ways that is leading you to self-harm, you just want to be sensitive to those things. So as you're receiving what we're saying, we're speaking at a high level in generalities. If you struggle in those areas, I want to encourage you to seek help as part of just your journey with Jesus and growing with Him. Jesus wants what's best for us.
Yes, because an over consumption of food can be an addiction,
or an under-assumption or under-consumption.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Eating and not letting it digest.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, even exercise can be an addiction for some of us.
Yeah.
So just
the gym rats of the world.
Yeah, I just want to be really aware of some of those pieces as you're watching this, or you might be sharing this with some friends and family. We want to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, and it's hard. For me, I can do better. This may sound strange because I talk to people who would say the opposite. I can do better when I'm home.
What do you mean? You mean
I can do
with
better
areas?
Yes, I can do better eating. Sleep, I have no problem with. 9:30 at night, I'm ready for bed. And if I'm up at 10:15, I can't believe I'm up that late. So sleep for me is, I don't worry about that.
You're on a good rhythm.
But but when I think about diet, when I'm at home and I get in a routine of the day, I can think, okay, today I'm going to eat this fruit cup like I mentioned, or I'm going to make this salad, and then we're going to have chicken or whatever. It's when I'm working that what happens, I get so caught up in what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness, I just missed lunch. So now I eat more in the evening.
Sure.
And then it becomes destructive in the sense, because I have to think about age, where maybe you wouldn't have to think about that, eating later in the evening, but that's not good. So I find myself sometimes that is my downfall.
Yeah.
Not taking the time to stop throughout the day.
Yeah.
To put a plan together and working to, So I think we all have those things we have to work on.
Sure.
And we don't sit here, at least I don't sit here, okay, I got all this together, so let us let me tell you how to do it.
I would be letting the viewers know that you're a fraud.
So okay, all right, that's good. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's you can go to you can say, hey, I went to the gym and all that, but it takes the whole day.
Yeah.
You know, and putting that together. So I think when we think about diet and thinking healthy, we've created our culture and allowed in our culture to take us over to where it's not healthy. And working, being able to cook at home, for example.
Oh, yeah.
It's let's not cook tonight. I'll just go to Giant. And it sounds good because I'll go to Giant and get one of those chickens that are already cooked, you know. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying we have a tendency to find other ways maybe than taking the time to cook at home to create a healthier meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And planning goes a long way. It won't solve all your problems, but it goes a long way.
And some of you are good out there because I hear people say, "Oh, well, we take Sunday afternoons, you know, and we cook and prepare
exactly.
and it's all packed
we
up
meal prep for the week and we're getting ready. You know, we got the kids kind of portions over here and mom and dad's portions over here. Yeah, so there's a lot of practical things, and we would love to hear from you. You know, what have you found that works for you? It's kind of putting the invitation out there for maybe your struggles, but we also want to hear like, hey, how do we move forward in some of these areas? Maybe you know of some good resources. We've kind of dropped several, not just through this conversation, but through this series.
Oh yeah, and if you've paid attention to all the series or go back and look at them, you know, we had of course Jason Berry who kind of helps us think about our routine. He wrote a book that helps in that area. We have that here at Genesis, or you can go online and find that. Amen Clinics, we mention them all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff out there because all these things create a healthy brain.
Right.
And that's the key as well, maintaining a healthy brain.
Optimum functioning. Yeah. Loving God, loving people.
Yeah, so there are a lot of good resources out there. I think what we have to do is be careful of the fad diets. The things that God created food. You know, you think of the animals that we can eat, vegetation we grow. God created that, and it's not that those things are bad. So I think sometimes we get off on some crazy diets or what's the latest fad, and it's really management. It's not so much what's the latest thing; it's managing what already exists. So I think people get discouraged because I hear from the medical community, you know, when you think about fad diets as an example, you might lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, but then when you put it back on, you put more back on, actually. So those are things that
I think that's a helpful caveat because there's a healthy way to lose and gain weight.
Yeah, so you got to get the good resources. Yeah. Yep. Find the good resources and build from there. Yep. And everybody's going to build their routine differently. It's not like not one person is right, you know. Yeah. It's just being cautious of those that are maybe going to the extreme. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've covered quite a bit here. Any final thoughts that you have as we wrap this up?
No, I think these things, you know, sometimes the simplest things are the hardest things to do, you know.
They really are. If we
don't think it's complicated, it must not be worth anything. So, I would just say, you know, keeping it simple, thinking through a simplistic process.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you, Pastor Bob.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope that this was helpful and insightful. Please feel free to share, feel free to comment, interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll look forward to seeing you in our next episode as we continue this journey through wellness. We'll see you then.